What is a church? People who never set foot inside one, and those who do it regularly, often think they know. But they might be wrong. On Songs of Praise this evening, we'll be meeting people who are finding inspiring and often surprising new ways of being a church. Today, we're exploring some of the challenging ideas about how we express faith and approach worship in the 21st century. The new ways of thinking about what a church should be are sometimes referred to as fresh expressions. One of the hallmarks of these is the desire not to retreat from contemporary culture, but to embrace it. For many people, the word church means a building, but it's been argued that the modern church should be based on a concept known as ecclesia. One of the country's leading Christian thinkers, Jonathan Bartley, told me what he meant by that.
Well, ecclesia is a Greek word, which is a secular political term which the early church really took to describe itself. It's found throughout the New Testament, and it encapsulates the idea that the church is called together for a purpose. Often that purpose was political, and it involved the church understanding itself as a movement rather than an institution that involved the Christians in any given area, challenging the people around it, challenging the world around it, and challenging the social institutions to change, often in a subversive way.
So what does that mean in practice for a church now?
Today is very exciting because now the church is moving once again to the margins. It's moving further away from government, and somewhat ironically it's rediscovering a political message that doesn't hinge on being part of the state, doesn't hinge on being part of the government, but actually is about challenging the social order rather than defending it.
What's the bottom line for a church trying to redefine itself in a biblical way?
I think the bottom line for the church has to be Jesus Christ, and as long as we focus on exploring Jesus, who Jesus was, and we rediscover and discuss more, then we're on safe ground. It's quite a frightening message for some people to hear people talking about the church subverting the culture, about challenging institutions, about being perhaps a little bit naughty and on the fringes. And indeed, it is quite dangerous. It can be quite unnerving for Christians to be engaged in that as well as hear about that, particularly at a time of radical religious terrorism. But as long as I think we focus on Jesus Christ, we start to understand that Jesus had a strong political dimension. The historical Jesus who operated in the political as well as the spiritual and cultural climate of his day, then we're on safe ground.
New types of church are to be found in skate parks and cafes, school halls and community centres. Many, like the internet-based iChurch, are nurtured and supported by the established denominations. There's a good example of this at St Matthew's Church in Westminster. Here, the Church of England's traditional worship exists alongside a new kind of congregation called Moot.
Moot is a new form of church. It's trying to engage with people who don't relate to traditional church, particularly people in their 20s and 30s or 40s who dismiss it as irrelevant. So it's particularly trying to engage with people who are spiritually searching in life, because I think there's something about this generation at the moment that there is much in life, but there's something missing. So we put on services that are kind of explorative. We're trying to engage with Christian spirituality and drawing on the ancient tradition of the church to enable people to encounter something positive about what it means to be Christian.
I like the way I can be honest. Obviously relationships take time and you can't spill your guts to people that you don't know, but I feel there is an acceptance. It seems to me that everyone here has been through and is continuing to be on a journey of questioning, of asking those questions that in some church environments you're not allowed to ask. For example, when you doubt God's existence, when you feel that bad things have happened to you and you feel abandoned by God, you're allowed to ask those things without being shamed.
We're using film or art, music, very different mix of things. Some of it's modern, some of it's ancient, and it's somehow fused together, and it brings about something that for me I can really encounter God in. There's something quite mystical about what happens here.
Tonight Moot is using a labyrinth service, which is a very ancient form of worship, which reflects a pilgrimage. Labyrinths are different from mazes in the sense that they are about following a path to arrive somewhere, and then being with God in wherever that place is, and then returning back into the world. So it reflects the old pilgrimages that used to happen in the Middle Ages. So tonight they will be searching for God and meaning in their life, and there, as an act of prayer, will pilgrimage to the centre of the labyrinth to be with God, and then go back into the world from that place. So it's trying to use a very ancient thing in a very new way, particularly for people who are spiritually searching and trying to move from being spiritual tourists to being spiritual pilgrims.
This is the second time I've done the labyrinth. The first time I did it, I was feeling really cynical about it and didn't really want to do it, to be honest. I wasn't quite sure how it fitted. But I actually find the experience very moving, and for me it reminds me that my faith is about a journey with God, and I think in the past it's felt more like climbing a ladder and trying to reach a higher plane than feel closer to God, whereas the labyrinth reminds me that it's an ongoing journey, and it's just seeing other people that I know and love walking this journey with me. It reminds me that I'm not on my own, and that God walks with me.
Moot is trying to be a prophetic place. It's trying to be a place of God and the presence of God. So it's trying to say that there is goodness in the world, there is a hope, as Christ is very present with us. So hopefully it will smell, taste and look of Christ in a world that sometimes feels quite vacuous. So I hope that people will meet and encounter Christ through what we do.